you.
This is Michael Vass with the Binghamton Political Examiner.com, and I'm taking a moment today to speak with Assemblywoman Claudia Tenney, who's here today at the event. And I just want to take a quick moment to speak with you, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman, one of the things I see recently that you've been speaking out about that is very important, it's a national issue as well as local, is the Trans-Pacific Pact,
Right.
the TPP,
Right.
as it's sometimes called, that President Obama is trying to push, and even seeing a lot of resistance, and you oppose it as well.
Right.
Could you tell us why?
Yeah, well, recently I did a column and submitted it around, and the Washington Times accepted it. And it's a controversial issue, but it's kind of an interesting issue because it puts together sort of Tea Party conservatives and unions, which is an unusual marriage. And what we unify on is that we're trying to preserve U.S. jobs and U.S. sovereignty. And those are really some of the heart of the issue on TPP. So what TPP does, it's an agreement, a trade agreement. I call it NAFTA 2 and 3, because we've done a number of agreements. But unfortunately, when the United States enters into agreements for so-called free trade, which we think of as free market principles and things that we embrace as conservatives and people who believe in the capitalist system. But when you take U.S. sovereignty and you negotiate it with countries that don't honor those principles, and many of them are socialist countries, they're run by dictatorships, they don't comply with the same rules that we comply with, they manipulate their currency, they don't comply with environmental standards, and in the end what you end up having is an unfair trade agreement where the U.S. workers are jeopardized, their jobs are jeopardized against cheaper labor from other countries that don't have the same cost of doing business, and their countries are basically cheating on these agreements. What TPP does is, and fast track, is give the president the ability to go ahead and negotiate a treaty, and they're what they call docking agreements. So the president can negotiate a treaty, say, with 8 nations. Once that's done, the role of Congress to come back in and ratify that treaty is over. So that means if later the president, solely on his own, whoever the president may be, wants to go and add China or another country, he can do that, and the Congress has no say over it. That's the sovereignty issue. The other big issue I have is that we simply have a $12 trillion trade deficit over the past 20 years since NAFTA was passed, where we've lost jobs. So our import-export measures we're getting huge numbers of imports coming from these countries, these so-called trading partners, and American jobs are being lost. So we are not exporting in the same level. So the deficit's about $700 million a year, and it's just killing U.S. jobs. So a lot of these jobs are going overseas, and they're dumping products, cheap products, into our market, which people are buying because our economy's poor. So that's what ends up happening with TPP and why I don't support it. I think it's great to talk about the concept of free trade, but free trade among nations is something that really doesn't happen it may be in a perfect world, but it certainly doesn't work in the world that we live in.
Well, in a related, let me segue a little bit into a related issue.
Okay.
Which more directly deals with New York State and all of our constituents and friends. And that would be the New York startup plan.
The startup New York scam, as I call it.
Yeah, the startup plan was pushed forward by Governor Cuomo. It's another subject you've been very vocal about recently, and also very important because again, it deals with jobs here in New York State. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The day that they introduced Startup New York, I was against it. And I talked against it on the floor of the Assembly, and I spoke out against it, and I did releases against it. The whole concept is flawed. It is a crony capitalist dream, or many people call it just cronyism. We're taking taxpayer money and we're giving it to corporations, which, by the way, is a violation of the state constitution. But we're running around giving a free benefits to corporations that want to come and start up shop here, as long as they work with the SUNY campus. So that's how they kind of circumvent the Constitution, is by using the SUNY campus. So they're going to say you're on a SUNY campus. Guess what? The employees that are part of the Startup New York, they don't pay income tax. That's an equal protection issue on the federal level. So we're now violating the federal Constitution. Money going. We did over $200 million in advertising on these commercials all over New York State, all over the country. Coincidentally, as Governor Cuomo was running for governor, and they were always cited next to one of his paid ads that was done by his campaign committee or the Democratic committee. And then they were run across the country as he contemplated possibly a presidential run. So even though his name isn't mentioned, they're veiled ads really for Cuomo. So we used all this money, and in the end they created 76 jobs. What it does also is hurts local businesses like mine, for example, and I'll just use that because it's an easy example. We started in 1946. We're not eligible for Startup New York, but someone can start a business on a SUNY campus a few miles down the road and get millions of dollars theoretically from this program and run our business out of town, take our employees for 10 years, and they hurt our business. And then when the 10-year benefits are done with this so-called tax-free status, guess what happens after that? They leave. So people like our business, so the whole thing, that's why I call it a scam, because it really was never intended to really to draw jobs. It was really more of a way for the governor to come up with a way to advertise himself. I mean, that's all it's proven to be. And the state controller came out with his report this week, which was released, which kind of proved that. It said really there wasn't anything to this. And when they were questioned, I thought it was really interesting that the governor's response was, and the governor's team, and this is Empire State Development, ESD, who administers the program, by the way. Their response was, well, we had 17% increase at the Baseball Hall of Fame induction ceremony this year over last year, thanks to advertising with Startup New York. Well, those weren't things that were actually contemplated by the startup program. This is, there's no startup company with the Baseball Hall of Fame. But the reason that they were up 17% is last year's, the 2013, 2 years back, induction ceremony involved 3 baseball players who were born or died in the 40s, who were inducted. Last year, they had Joe Torre and Greg Maddux and well-known names, Yankee legends, who were inducted. That's the reason that actually the state controller surmised that maybe we had a 17% increase, not $40 million in advertising from the Startup New York for that particular sector. So, they've even admitted it. So here we go again, wasting taxpayer money, squandering the resources that we have. We're about to speak at a conference. We're going to talk about whether or not, recently, and this week also, the governor closed off natural gas drilling for a number of people and homeowners who are interested in pursuing that, and that's not going to happen now, at least in the near term. So, there's been a lot going on.
There's a lot.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about the Senate yet.
No.
So, yeah, but thank you.
Now that you brought it up, I have to ask. There is, of course, the question about the Senate. There's a question about Congress. Any comments on that at this time?
On me? Oh, I don't know about me at the moment, but as far as the Senate has been, with Dean Skelos, the Senate Majority Leader, being under indictment this week and stepping down reluctantly, threatening, saying, I'm going to step down and you're going to lose your Republican seat if you don't put the guy in that I want. And in a straw vote, in a private vote, of course, the Senate voted to put the governor's pick and Skelos's pick. Senator Flanagan from Long Island beat out Senator DeFrancisco from up north. And of course, we assume that Senator Libous, who's been very ill, sent in a proxy vote because they said he was in Florida. So somehow they voted in absentee. And so that's just another issue for another day. But the Senate is definitely in flux right now. And of course, that's going to affect elections next year. And
It's going to make it very
interesting to see who's going to have a primary and see who's even going to be around to run next year.
It's going to be a very interesting time. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But I know that the event's going to be starting soon.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much, and keep up the good work. I know that you also wrote on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I'm grateful for your comments on that too. We follow your blog.
Assemblywoman Claudia Tenney.
Thank you, Gilda. I think that was a very nice introduction. And actually, I feel like I've known Gilda my entire life. We had such a great relationship that we continue to cultivate from last year. And it's just, it's hard sometimes to be in New York and be conservative. But because you're all here, every one of you is a brave person. And I shouldn't have to say that we're brave, but we're fighting a battle that is very akin to what our founders fought. And it's very, very hard to change the way people think, and yet we're the ones who show common sense We're the ones that makes, this world is crazy, and as many of you learned who came to Albany, and I thank you, anyone in this room, I know some of you were there, we knew we weren't going to get that bill out, and I told Steve Allstaff that, but I said, if you want to come and see, your people see what's really going on here and what we're up against, you should send them down. And I think a lot of people were glad they made the effort, and they saw what really happens in Albany, and that many of us are now learning that no matter how many ethics laws we pass, it's really about enforcing them, and nobody will. So that's why we rely on Preet Bharara at this point. Sadly, but unfortunately that's the way it is, which is why I voted for him as Speaker of the Assembly. People made fun of me for that vote, but at this point he's done more to clean up Albany than anybody else has in my years there, and I was first elected in 2010. And one of the things that I want to talk about, just a little about conservative issues, is that we're looked at like we're some kind of disease, and I'm not, I'm conservative, but I have a sister who's a Democrat and a liberal, and she scoffs at me when I have Fox News on. So I just like, hey, you're in my house, you want to drink coffee in the kitchen with me? You're going to watch Fox News, or whatever I want to watch. But anyway, and sometimes Fox I'm not so excited about either. I'm starting to look for another alternative, but some of the, I feel like they're just, a lot of it is what we're fighting against conservatives, is trying to preserve our founding principles. And that is one of the hardest things that we seem to be doing in this country. And I think back, I read a lot of books when I was younger about Lincoln. I know my son's very interested. And one of the things that Lincoln always said, and if you look at the breadth of Lincoln's work, is his biggest theme would be, can we save the republic? Can we govern ourselves? And that's a huge question. And every time I see what goes on in Albany, I really question whether we can do that or not. And it's really up to us to start teaching our children what it's all about and what the Constitution stands for. And it disheartens me when I run into people from New York City and people in my own town who say things like, nobody should have guns except the police. And I would say, do you know what the Second Amendment stands for? Yes, it's for the government to have guns to protect us. I mean, it's like, it's amazing what people really don't know about our Constitution. And I know everybody in this room, or at least most of you, unless there's a plant here somewhere, value what it's all about. And the Constitution is such a simple guideline. If we just followed it, imagine all these things we wouldn't have. Common Core, for example. We wouldn't have the SAFE Act. We wouldn't have all these ridiculous laws and rules that are going on in the state assembly, all these regulations. And I think all it does is tell us what the framework is for government. We have the role of the federal government as defined by the Constitution, and we have the role of the state government as defined by our own constitutions. And the federal government has just intruded into all of our lives, and I think your speaker's going to talk a little bit about that. We're becoming a statist society, where these non-government organizations are drawing us into this one big net. We have an exploding, enormous bureaucracy in Washington and in Albany that is the executive branch. Just think about when you go to Washington, D.C., the mall and all these things, all of those are executive agencies that are beholden and power, and they're all presidential power. All things that were trying to be stopped by our founders. The reason Congress is first is because it's important. It's the most important position, and it's the most important house. The reason that the House has the ability to originate bills and to stop appropriations is that's why. But they don't do anything. They all think, oh, we got to spend more money, we got to continue on this path. And so one of the things I've been doing, because I've been fighting this battle, and I thank you to everybody here, and a lot of you were in this, helped me last year with the congressional campaign, which I kind of jumped into, and if it weren't for you, it wouldn't have been as close as it turned out to be. But one of the things I've been doing is just continually trying to get our message in the mainstream media as much as possible. And I've been writing a lot of articles on various things. This year alone, I wrote a piece in the New York Post on Startup New York Plan, the governor's Startup New York Plan. I know there was a delay in the accounting of it, and ESD, the Empire State Development, was supposed to put it out, and they were going to wait till the budget, and I knew that millions and hundreds of millions were spent, and so I wrote a piece calling it a scam, which is exactly what it is, in the New York Post. So I'm trying to get our ideas out there as I can in incredible publications. After that, when the whole Sheldon Silver issue arose, which, by the way, I've been fighting Sheldon Silver since 2012, podcast our ethics rules, and it's a payoff deal to cover up sexual harassment claims in the Assembly. The guy who presided over our ethics rules, by the way, and now you find out he's mesothelioma victims to enrich himself, all these things that Preparer has discovered. So I called him out in 2012, and everyone said your brake lines are going to go out, they're going to run you off the road, all that. Well, thankfully it hasn't happened yet. But this is the kind of stuff that's going on in Albany, and everybody looks the other way. And so I wrote on that. I called it career politician syndrome. And that's what we have in Albany. And you can read that piece, that's in the National Review, and I did on National Review Online just about some of the details of what's going on in Albany and how to understand these characters and why they do the crazy things they do. And I think I went back and was thinking when this week when the Skelos event occurred, I said you can go back and read Career Politician Syndrome again and see why so many of these entrenched politicians voted to keep the status quo, because the status quo is benefiting them. They're enriching themselves at our expense. And this is not just happening on the state level, this is happening on the national level to an even larger extent. And so that's the reason I've been just trying to delve into these articles. They're provocative, I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm not concerned about getting reelected, I'm concerned about saving the Republic, truthfully. And if we can, I think this is a serious mission. Recently too, and I want to mention this because with Gilda, I know she's very big in the Tea Party, and interesting issue that I also wrote about this year that I published in the Washington Times a couple of weeks ago, with Trans-Pacific Partnership and Fast Track. And it's the unions and the Tea Party together. But what it's really about is preserving, again, the sovereignty of the United States and also preserving jobs in this country. And I put some statistics. I worked with another manufacturer from my region up in Rome, New York, a guy named Brian O'Shaughnessy, who runs a company. He's actually been talking to me about this for quite a while. He runs a company called Revere Copper and Brass. Now, Revere was started by Paul Revere. It's one of the oldest companies in the country. And he's a true manufacturer, and they've lost a huge amount of their manufacturing base. And many Americans have lost their jobs due to this trade imbalance that we have. We've signed these agreements like NAFTA. Now the Republicans, of all things, are going to fast track this trade agreement that's going to put us in more jeopardy with our jobs in the United States. And one of the things things aren't always what they sound like. If you're people that believe in capitalism and free markets like I do, free trade in the international world with the state of the way the United States is and our position in the world, which is scary in a lot of ways, is not what it sounds like. It's not truly free trade. It's not like me trading across the street with Gilda or something. You're dealing with these huge multinational corporations with millions of dollars. They're taking advantage of their own citizens. They're manipulating their currency. They're not paying their citizens adequately. They're violating all the laws that we would not consider violating, environmental, you name it, they're not constrained by that. They're run by dictatorships, and we're putting ourselves on a level playing field with these companies, or these countries that are cheating, basically. So what has it done for us? It's caused this massive trade deficit. So we're importing so much more than we're sending out, which has caused this huge number of American jobs to be lost. And so the issue sounds great, free trade. A lot of politicians don't want to take the real. I don't want anyone to say I'm against free trade. We're not against free markets, but it's not really free when you have the United States complying with the treaties and the rest of the country's cheating, and then we give up our sovereignty, and we now have our own private companies that are incorporated in the United States appearing before the World Court and having some dictator who's not complying with the rules and his group of bureaucrats, those people we're afraid of that are part of the executive branches down in Washington and Albany, saying, you can't, finding our companies, you owe $1 billion, or you're going to do this, and they'll put us out of business and take over our market. And we need to protect our markets, we need to protect our jobs, and that's part of the reason that I put that piece out. And I just thought, I don't want to go through all the details of it, but I thought I'd let you know that some of what I'm trying to do is get these ideas out so that we're writing and we're constantly in front of the public and the media so they see that we're out there and we're going to continue to fight this battle to preserve this country. And you people are a key role, play a key role in that, because you're here, you're getting people like Tom to come and speak to you. I just saw a couple interviews with, I don't know where he's sitting, I can't see him in the crowd, but somewhere over there. Oh, there he is. I saw him do an interview on Fox News and some other things. This year I've been on Cavuto a number of times talking about trade issues, talking about business issues, our business here. And so there's been, a lot of things going on that we really need to continue to talk about, and we need to articulate these issues. And that's just what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to continue to try to write. I'm working on another piece having to do with the life issue. Gilda mentioned it a minute ago. Our congressman again yesterday distinguished himself as being one of the 4 Republicans to vote for late-term abortion. And he's, drafted, he's like the sponsor of an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, on an issue, trying to get the Constitution to uphold that there is a right to have gay marriage. And whether you agree with that or not, it's not something that the Constitution, we shouldn't be dealing with this stuff on the federal level, it's a state issue. So we need to put government in the roles that it was intended to do. The federal government has its role and the state government has its role, and we have forgotten what the 10th Amendment is. The 10th Amendment is that sort of trump card that's in there that says anything that is not mentioned in the Constitution is not the role of the federal government. I'm paraphrasing. It's up to the states or the people to decide what those rules are going to be. And so that's why I think we really need to continue to emphasize. I know you hand constitutions out, you sell them, I hand them out. I always have one with me. But I really think we need to continue to just talk about those values, because I saw an interesting piece the other day that millennials are actually starting to be more common sense. They're not just libertarians, they're starting to be a little bit more like conservatarians, that sort of hybrid. So I think that there's hope, but we need to continue to appeal to them and do it through modern technology or however. And I think that you're going to find that we're going to make some progress, but it's not going to be easy. We're literally crossing the Delaware. I mean, this is tough. And so I don't know if you want me to ask questions, but I just wanted to say thank you, and I apologize that I have to leave, but I've got to go up to another event. But I just wanted to have you make sure you're looking and reading, and I'll forward stuff around. I know that Gilda, Jim Sacco, a lot of you have an email chain. Anything that I write or put out or we can put out, give it to me. I'll send it around, and we'll continue to get the message out there. I know Mike Vass is sitting here. He does a great blog. He's on Facebook a lot. He's a champion of our conservative values, and we just need to continue to grow our base. And I think that we're going to do better than you think. And I think with all this excitement going on in Albany, I think it's a good thing. I put something out on Twitter the other day about stability. One of the senators said, we have to support Flanagan for stability. I'm like, stability? What does that mean? Stability. We need to change what's going on. So I think a little courage, and we may actually do better in the end. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. We got a question.
As you know, Claudia, all we have recommendations. Walk the hall, talk to the guys, money, and any way that we can do more efficiently, a little bit better, have a little bit bigger of an impact. What is the way it's
Say that again. Is there any way you can have a bigger impact?
Yeah.
Well, this is Al Malardinelli, in case anybody doesn't know him. I can't imagine you don't. He's typically seen with Denver Jones. And I have to tell you, Al is been very aggressive in Albany. I see him all the time. In fact, Hannah was remarked that they're standing there by the garbage can in the concourse, grabbing every senator and assembly person that goes by. People know who they are, because when we were fighting this SAFE Act repeal and we were trying to get it out, everyone's like, oh, hi, like Al, they know you somehow. So he's been very aggressive advocate, and I think he's doing the right thing. Is he's going to the New York City delegation, because that's where a lot of our worst problem is, although it's our upstate senators who threw us under the bus this week. But we really need to adopt them and to get them to understand what we are looking for and articulate to them, not just talk to people who already agree with us. So I commend Al and Denver for doing that, because I know Denver ran for office last year, which was, you know, it's hard to run for office. You get attacked constantly, and you know, you say, well, geez, you know, we don't like these people, but you know, if you're getting attacked, that must mean you're doing something good. That's all I can say, because they wouldn't be coming after you. So, yeah, I think keep the fight, Al. I think you're making, when Al gets on the elevator and our speaker, pro tem, gives him a big man hug with a big shake and says, how are you? And I was like, how do you know Al? You know, he's making some headway. It takes time. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. We're working. We're trying hard to get somewhere. But every little bit helps. I mean, I think that having all of you there really sent a message. I mean, they were nervous in that codes committee meeting. And the funniest thing, I'll mention this just because I don't know how many were actually, I think Steve wasn't there, but Gilda and some people were there. One of our members, the Democratic side, looked and said, I think we should have this in a hearing room. Well, that was like music to my ears, because we've been trying to get them, the meetings, to be held in a hearing room. We've been trying to make them truly public meetings. We've been trying to strengthen the committee process in Albany, talk about bills, debate them, and have them discussed with real facts and information before they go to the floor. And the guy next to him said, shh, we don't want to do that. And that just showed, but see, people, some of them are thinking the right thing, so we just need to encourage and nurse those people along that actually are trying to do the right thing, but just get silenced by the others. So, anyway, anybody else have a question? I got a couple. Sure.
Just one quick question. Rob Astorino was the last election cycle had over 51,000 votes in the ballot for the Reform Party. What are your thoughts on that?
Him changing the name of it? Or
The support for Rob Astorino?
well, that was, obviously, I think if the Senate Republicans had come out strongly, all of them, for Rob Astorino, I think you might have seen a difference. I think it really would have helped.
What are your thoughts on
Well, I mean, I think that Michael Lawler said it right on Fred Dicker's show and in the Post. He said that Skelos and the crew, you know, who I consider them all to be crapitalists, as I call them, or crony capitalists, or someone told me don't use crony capitalism, call them cronies, whatever. These people have huge donors. They all have the same donor. They're using taxpayer money to help themselves and their friends. And I think Rob Astorino was a great candidate. He wasn't afraid to stand up. He came out against Startup New York. He supported the SAFE Act. He supported natural gas drilling. He came out on a lot of issues that the governor is hiding from. He was very courageous, and I just think he got no support from the Senate Republicans. I think only a couple helped him. I think Senator O'Mara and Senator Marchione were the only ones I know, but I could be wrong, maybe some others did. But some of these people have $500, $600, $700, $1 million in their campaign accounts, and they couldn't come up with, you know, a few $1,000s for them. I gave them $1,000 out of my own pocket.
Chris Christie, the RNC, couldn't donate nothing to it.
Right, and that was embarrassing too. Well, I have my own feelings about Chris Christie, since his PAC spent $850,000 against me in my congressional race. So, yeah, I mean, it's really, if we could unite as Republicans and not talk about this reaching across the aisle and being Republican light, if we could just talk about the Constitution. We all take an oath. What's so hard about that? That's really all it is. But thank you. I thought Rob was a great candidate. I just thought he just got thrown under the bus. Thank you.
Start to learn to fear people.
Exactly. 10th Amendment, it's not just the states, it's the people too. But thank you, I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.